All right. All right. I can't see if people are joining. Ray, are you gonna give me a thumbs up? But how about, I guess it's not 5 yet, so let's or 4. Let's give a few more minutes. Oh, I see it's. Okay. Got it. Cool. So welcome. We're gonna wait a few minutes and let people join us here. In the meantime, we thought it'd be fun to kick off with a poll and ask you some questions about kind of what do you think is the most valuable part about a luxury brand. So please take a couple moments as we have more participants joining here. Okay, great. So seeing some questions come in or answers come in. Interesting. All right, so those that are joining now, we're gonna kind of wait a few more minutes, and so please fill out this poll that we have, getting the audience input on what is most valuable to you when it comes to a luxury brand. Interesting. So far, brand value, heritage, and product are kind of brand value leads, product heritage are second, and aesthetics following. Narratives right now is a little behind. We'll see as we have more people joining. Please go ahead and complete the poll. It'll be interesting to kind of gauge this audience versus what we'll hear on kind of the more general LinkedIn audience when it comes to kind of how they perceive brands and what's important for them. All right, we'll wait a few more minutes, maybe 1 or 2 more minutes, and we'll get started. All right. All right, I think we can get started. So great to have everyone here today with us. And thanks so much for joining. We've got a great session ahead of us. Okay, so we have the poll outcomes. In a second, I'll share that. So just kind of before we get going, we have plenty of time for Q&A. Please use the Q&A icon on your Zoom meeting to ask questions throughout this webinar, and we'll make sure to do our best to answer as many questions as possible. We also have a Net-a-Porter gift card for a lucky winner. We will draw that at the end and inform you. My name is Yaron Litwin. I lead marketing at Paragon, and it's with great pleasure that I'd like to, let me just get rid of this. Well, great pleasure to introduce you to Tatiana Dupont. We're not only hosting Tatiana digitally, we're actually hosting her physically at our Paris office. Tatiana, I hope the team is taking care of you and making sure you're feeling welcome.
Yes. Hi, everybody. Thanks, Yaron, and thanks to the team. Yeah, it's actually my first time in an office since March 2020. So it's quite nice. It's nice to have a chat today, but it's also nice to be sitting in a meeting room.
Fantastic. All right. Well, I look forward to this call, and in a second we'll kind of get into your background in more detail.
Sure.
But as we in trying to kind of come up with a backdrop for our conversation, and really communicating and demonstrating the resurgence that we're seeing in luxury, I thought this was interesting that kind of LVMH, how investors are seeing luxury brands today, and as they've shifted from being laggards in digital, as you can see leading up to 2020, and all of a sudden have really become embracing digital and becoming leaders. Digital transformation is the kind of the number one topic for many or for most of these brands. And not only have they become very quick adopters of digital and have really shifted their business in many ways. COVID was kind of this wake-up call. They are now early adopters of new technology and emerging technology. So Ferrari, for example, has just hired their first CEO who comes from the tech industry. And Gucci is testing product on virtual worlds. And Breitling is understanding how they can authenticate their products through blockchain. So really massive adoption of these emerging technologies. And I think you can kind of see how investors are seeing this and believing in LVMH and many other luxury companies and brands. And of course, as part of this, they're also adopting LinkedIn, which is becoming a significant source of traffic for luxury brands. This is Fendi. We found this on SimilarWeb, where LinkedIn is actually their top source of traffic, which is just fascinating. And it's not something that I initially kind of expected for LinkedIn to be such a powerful network for luxury brands. So kind of with that as a backdrop, Tatiana, I think your career story is super interesting as you've shifted from traditional media into digital media, and you have this amazing front row seat into what's happening at luxury. And I'd love to hear from you. What are you seeing? How are brands kind of adopting to this new digital world? Please give us your perspective.
Yeah, thanks, Yaron, for this introduction. I think you summed it up. I mean, it was clearly an industry that got hit pretty hard by the pandemic, but we're seeing like amazing signs of recovery. It's not even recovery at this stage. It's really like it's just growing again. And you're right, it's a very innovative industry. But to answer your question about my career, thanks for thinking it's a great career. Hopefully it's not over. But I joined LinkedIn about 5 years ago now to build a luxury vertical in the marketing solutions team. So basically my role is really like to work with luxury brands and help them like use LinkedIn as a platform of communication. And before that, I used to work at the New York Times, and I'm super proud like that have been working and that I'm still working for like two such amazing brands or like prestigious brands. And when I was at the New York Times, I mean, I'm not a journalist, but I was very proud that my work was contributing to what I think is the best journalism in the world. I mean, it's the media that won the most Pulitzer Prizes. I'm convinced that some of the investigations that the New York Times did, they actually contributed to like changing the world. It sounds maybe a little too much, but I'm convinced it's true. So it really gave like purpose to what I was doing, was to bring money to this institution and also to help luxury brands be very creative, because on top of being such an amazing publisher and journalistic institution, they've always been very innovative in the way they build their like business model. The New York Times, it was the first publisher to have people they had to pay to access the content because they value what's created by the New York Times. But also from an advertising or like content standpoint, they created the T brand studio when I was still working there, and they were bringing really like immersive solutions to brands. So it was really like an amazing experience. I was in charge of strategic luxury accounts there. And when LinkedIn reached out, to be honest, I was always like, I've always used LinkedIn a lot, but I was surprised and not confused, but I could see what was in it for luxury brands. But at first, I was like, why would I leave the New York Times to go work for LinkedIn for luxury brands? And I'm guessing that's what a lot of brands go through or have been through, like maybe in the nights. It's kind of a, I mean, this question have changed, but I think what's super interesting is what LinkedIn has to bring to brands in general. It's become much more than like a platform where you go look for a job. It's still the #1 place in the world where people look for a job, but it's much more than that. And I actually think that there's a lot in common between these two. So it's not New York Times, it's not a platform, but between these two media is that LinkedIn is now a media. There's a very strong commitment to quality, to protecting the members, and to bringing content that's very interesting. So I made the move, and we're now seeing that luxury content is on the rise on LinkedIn. The engagement with luxury brands like Dior, or Chanel, or Gucci, or Louis Vuitton, they are some of the highest on LinkedIn amongst other industries. We're seeing like large brands doing live fashion shows on LinkedIn, or we're seeing more discreet brands like Patek Philippe or Audemars Piguet, share like kind of the behind the scenes of their world. So I don't know if we're like the emerging platform, because it's been a little while, but definitely we have a role to play in communications for brands these days, and not just communication. I'm talking about the communication side, but of course about the digital transformation.
Fantastic. I can totally relate. I mean, I see how over time LinkedIn has become a big source of media, just what people are posting, access to new editorial, which previously I wasn't aware of. I'm a long-time New York Times subscriber, but definitely can see kind of that shift. And so.
And really just, sorry, Aaron, but to answer like the second part of your question about like the digital adoption and what we're seeing on LinkedIn, you just said it yourself. I mean, we're now like, editorial is very important at LinkedIn. There's about 100 journalists working in the editorial team. We have a editor-in-chief for like EMEA who's based in France, Sandrine Chauvin, and we have like Dan Ross in the US, who's the global editor-in-chief. He used to work for Forbes Digital, and they really are like writing daily. They're producing interviews with business leaders. They're doing podcasts and everything. And besides that, we have tools to analyze what are the conversation and what's trending on LinkedIn. And what's interesting is that when you're looking at especially like luxury conversation on LinkedIn, it's very much, as you said, about innovation. So we're talking about NFT, about gaming, about live shows, about like VR, etc. I just read like literally 3 minutes ago, I mean now it's maybe 15 minutes ago, an article about how Gucci just revealed that they created this new material. It's called Demetra, made from like sustainable material. This is the kind of conversation that's happening on LinkedIn, for example.
Perfect. So that kind of takes me to my next question. Share with us, what is from the luxury kind of brand's perspective, what are they seeing when they come to LinkedIn in terms of who is that audience that they're connecting with? What matters to them? What's top of mind for them, and how are brands engaging with that audience?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, there's 3 reasons why brands are coming to LinkedIn, and as you can see on this slide, is one of them, it's the mindset. The other one is obviously the audience itself, and it's their environment overall. So when we talk about the audience today, there's about 756 million members in 200 countries. So it's a lot of people in the world. And what's interesting is that we can not only reach out to the current customers of luxury brands, but also the next generation. And we know that this next generation, like the Gen Z and the millennials, who we've spoken so much about them and trying to understand them for the past years. But what we know is that they will represent more than half of the luxury customers by 2025. So that's pretty much like tomorrow. And what's interesting is that we know that these generation, they're interested to know like what brands stand for. they want to know what are the values, etc. And LinkedIn, it's really an environment where, because people are in this mindset where they want to understand brands, they're investing time, they're not coming to LinkedIn to spend time, they actually want to learn, they're curious. It creates a place where it's what's expected from brands, it's to really share their sense of purpose. It's really to share what's behind the scenes and what the values are. So what we usually recommend is, you know, take the uniqueness of LinkedIn and reach out to all of your stakeholders. So definitely reach out to your potential customers with more like product, you know, focused campaigns, but also reach out to your potential investor with more like, you know, image or corporate campaign. And also don't forget that your next employee will be, is on LinkedIn. So make sure you talk about employer branding and what it is to work, I don't know, at Chanel or at Kering and etc. And I think it's very unique in the ecosystem of platforms today to be able to reach such a large, you know, spectrum of stakeholders. And we know that they all have an impact on the other. So like the products that you produce, this will have an impact on who actually wants to work for your brand, and who actually wants to work for your brand will have an impact on like the investors, etc. So it's about making the most of that luxury mindset and environment. And just to wrap up on the mindset, what's interesting is that people on LinkedIn, they're very ambitious. So it's a platform where like you're really talking to someone who's willing to be successful. He wants to learn from mentors. So it's very specific, and we'll see later. We talk about what we call the LinkedIn multiplier effect and what's the impact of that multiplier effect on the actual willingness to spend and to buy luxury purchases.
Fantastic. And you know, what I found interesting, we saw this invite on LinkedIn that LVMH put out for a masterclass on happiness, and so I think what's interesting is to see how these luxury brands are responding to these needs. Just in 2020, a VP of diversity was hired to kind of, I think, lead some of these interests and conversations, as you mentioned. LVMH holding a happiness class. I mean, it's really a big shift. I'm guessing some of this perhaps was the environment during COVID or the height of COVID, where the conversation shifted a little. You touched on this, but could you please add kind of more around how you're seeing brands shift and connect to these emerging needs and values that the new audience, the new luxury buyer has?
Yeah, I think like any big crisis, like the pandemic that just happened, any crisis in the world, it always like brought change. So definitely this past year and a half, or like, yeah, year and a half, it like helped the digital, like the whole transformation of this industry go faster. But this is something that was already happening. And I think it's pretty fascinating because the luxury industry, they really have, most of the brands, they have one foot like in the past. They're very much like heritage brands, and they have all these like amazing craftsmanship and like métier, or like jobs that, you know, have been existed for like hundreds of years. But at the same time, they're very much looking to the future because they're you know, the next generation of consumer, they're like the younger generation. So it's super interesting. And I think your example of LVMH and like hosting happiness masterclass, it's a very good illustration. There's a lot of other examples of, for example, Cartier, who's doing like the Cartier Women Initiative Awards, which is basically an award that's given to like women entrepreneurs around the world. Chanel, they just announced that they're like partnering with Pharrell Williams to promote like Black entrepreneurship, or Dior, that's hosting like women speaking series on LinkedIn. For example, I don't know if you follow them, but they have like amazing conversation. Lately it was Ada Egerberg. So I'm not sure if I pronounce it right, and sorry if it's not, but she's a Norwegian female footballer. And so obviously it's super interesting what she has to say. So there's a lot more conversation. And I think this is happening because it's needed. It's what consumers want. That's what they're requesting in a way. And I think the era of like greenwashing, it's over. Like now what, you know, consumers want are like next generation of consumers, they actually want to see actions. They want honesty and transparency. And luxury brands, I mean, some of them are like the heritage brands, some of them have been maybe very secretive in the past, and it was part of the branding was to be very, you know, to not share that much. This has changed, and I think it's the fine balance for them. It's to be able to keep that, you know, kind of dream and what they have to bring, but also be very open about how they care about the employees, but also what do they do for the environment. I mean, we know that the fashion industry, I think, if I'm not wrong, it's the second most polluting industry in the world. There's definitely a lot of questions around fast fashion, etc. Even if that's not luxury, still, I mean, there's like consumption of goods. So there's a lot of subjects, and because the consumers have like requested more transparency and authenticity, I think it forced brands, and now we see brands that are really at the forefront of these changes. I mean, I'm talking about Gucci again, and it's just a coincidence, but they released their impact reports, I think about 2 or 3 days ago, and it's pretty interesting with their, you know, all the research that they've done, and talking about this Demetra new material that they launched. From what I read just now, it took them 2 years to create that new material, and I personally think like it's not, I mean, I'm sure it's a lot of work, but it doesn't feel like it's so long, 2 years. So if we can change, like if we can stop using, you know, leathers that are disappearing or animals that are disappearing, I feel like it's a good thing. So I think it's a fascinating industry because it is creating problem, but it is also looking for solutions, and that's what customers are looking for these days.
Very interesting. Our next webinar will be on happiness class as well.
Yeah.
Paragone.
Are you happy, Aaron?
All right. Cool. So, you know, I think what's interesting is what's happened over the past year with all of us, basically the entire world, working from home, and the lines between work and life have really blurred. And I think that kind of, from my perspective, and I'd love to hear your thoughts, but that's kind of created this unique opportunity for brands to come in and engage with audiences in these new channels. And these are a few screenshots from a live fashion show, runway show that Louis Vuitton hosted. I know there were millions of views. You wouldn't expect necessarily for that to, you know, to happen on LinkedIn. And so kind of share with us maybe some of the behind the scenes, if you will. How did this come about? When did you know that this was something that is actually reoccurring? I know there's many other events that are happening. And perhaps in your opinion on, you know, has the work from home allowed for this, for LinkedIn to become kind of a more top of mind channel or network for engaging on multiple levels?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, obviously, I mean, it's just the fact that it's the first time for me to be in an office in more than a year. Clearly, like personal and professional lives have like changed drastically. And what we've seen on LinkedIn, because, or like thanks, I don't know, to that, is that the engagement has been like higher, stronger and stronger. Earlier I mentioned one of the 3 reasons why luxury brands are coming to LinkedIn, one of them being the environment itself. And what I mean by the environment, it's the brand safety that LinkedIn can bring to, like, brand safety, or like just, you know, trust that it brings to us members, that it brings to companies. We've been ranked for the 4th year in a row the most trusted social network by Business Insider Digital Trust Report. It's something that's very important to us. So because of that, at a time, because of the pandemic, where there was a lot of different types of news, I think that helped LinkedIn like grow its engagement, because it was a very trustworthy source of news. Now, going back to your question, because of this engagement, we have seen a lot of brands that were in need to, like, you know, be more inclusive and still share like their collection, be more active. Louis Vuitton was actually the first brand to do a live show on LinkedIn, and that was before the pandemic. So it was in October 2019. And right from the start, I mean, the results were very engaging, from the number of peak viewers, and especially the ratio of peak viewers with the number of followers was very interesting. It's the team at Louis Vuitton, it's a very innovative team, and they were looking for new ways to bring like Louis Vuitton show to like a wider audience of luxury buyers and like, you know, fashion lovers. And we know that people on LinkedIn, and we know from like you know, sources like Global Web Index, for example, that people on LinkedIn are about 40% more interested than the average internet user in fashion. And so what we've seen is that not only the engagement during the show was very interesting, like was very positive, and that's something that's important on LinkedIn. I'm not saying there's no haters on LinkedIn. They might be there, but they don't express themselves on LinkedIn. There's a lot of respect, and there's a lot of quality engagement. We say it's positive or neutral, but it's very unlikely that it's going to be negative. And obviously, it's very important for brands. And so, for example, one of the show, I mean, Louis Vuitton was live yesterday with their amazing like cruise show, but numbers I can share is like one of the latest, I mean, one of the last show from Virgil Abloh in Shanghai, for example, in just a few days after the show, there was about 1.5 million video views on LinkedIn of the show. So it definitely, like, it's a proof of a strong engagement. And we now see brands like Chanel, Dior, Givenchy, Prada, Saint Laurent go live, and also like, you know, take formats like scheduled posts to make sure people are reminded when the live goes off. And I personally think that bringing these shows online, it's a really good way of widening the reach and the impact for the brand. And it's also a beautiful way to be more inclusive for brands that were once considered a bit too exclusive, maybe.
Very interesting. Any other kind of memorable formats outside of just events? Are there kind of other, perhaps some emerging formats that are being tested when it comes to events and combining, maybe now that we're going back kind of the physical and the digital?
Yeah, there's actually new formats. I mean, a lot of the product roadmap at LinkedIn, it's focused on digital events. So we now have like, you can create an event on LinkedIn and you can promote this event. Something that's very important to LinkedIn, it's the data that we're going to be able to use, etc. So when people register, you're going to be able to get that data. Of course, all of this is GDPR compliant. But it's creating events. It's a good way to like create communities around a specific topic. I mentioned earlier Dior and their women speaking series, and you can have access to their past events and take a look at all the people that came. So I mentioned that Norwegian football player, but it was also Marlene Schiappa, or like their Maria Grazia, their creative designer. And we know, like, we have done a lot of research about, you know, even if the world goes back to normal, there will still be a lot of digital events. So it's important to be able to create that sense of community and belonging into these events. So definitely digital events, it's a big hit for LinkedIn these days.
Very interesting.
And combining live and events is obviously a good way of making it very seamless.
Fantastic. All right, I do miss live events, but I'm sure some of these, you know, these digital events will probably improve and be very immersive. So
yeah.
All right, so we've engaged with the audience. We've come up with these amazing events. Eventually, brands are looking at the platform for advertising and converting. And so I'd like to talk a little bit about kind of some of the ad formats. And one that I noticed that I thought was just really interesting is that kind of B2C luxury brands are taking a play out of a kind of the B2B playbook and offering lead gen forms, and I guess having some kind of post follow up and eventually converting to buyers. Can you share with us what are some of the successful formats on LinkedIn, and what are you seeing that's working? How are brands perhaps implementing things in innovative ways and testing different ad formats on LinkedIn?
Yeah, I mean, you're definitely right. I mean, clearly LinkedIn was primarily a platform for B2B advertisers, and that has changed. It's a great example of Montblanc here using what we call a lead gen form. So as the name, I mean, as it's called, it's about generating leads and obviously like nurturing these leads to like enrich your customer database. But the approach on LinkedIn, it's very much like objective based and audience based. So there's no like format that's more B2B or B2C. It's about understanding like what's your objective as a brand. Is it drive to store? Is it generating lead because you want to enrich your customer database and you're working with your CRM team? But it's really define the objective, what's the audience that you're going to have in front, and then pick the format that works. And before I show you like a few other examples, I want to maybe share some results or like insights that we got from this really great study that we did. And if you want to have more information, please anyone reach out to me on LinkedIn or I guess on LinkedIn, and I'll happily share the results. We've done a study that's called Meet the Member, where we basically looked at the quality of the member on LinkedIn, the receptivity, and because of the mindset, how are people receptive or not to ads on LinkedIn, and what's the value that comes from this combination of quality and receptivity. And what we find is that LinkedIn, it's not only a platform that inspires members to be optimistic about their future, but it also provides them the motivation to act upon their dreams and to make that future a reality. So what's interesting is that the members' trust in LinkedIn and the positive feeling that comes from being on LinkedIn, it actually has an influence on the receptivity of your ads. So often I'm being asked, what's the impact of LinkedIn on the customer journey, and does LinkedIn have an impact on purchase, on the purchase journey? And we actually measured it with what we call the LinkedIn member multiplier effect. And what we found, I don't remember the exact number of the sample, but we obviously have all the methodology that we can share, and these are official numbers. But what we found is that people that are spending time on LinkedIn, they have a purchase intent that will increase drastically. And on top of that purchase intent that will increase, it's that the willing to spend, they are willing to spend more by 138% than on any other social platform. So it really creates this like very kind of sky is the limit mindset that has an impact on how you want to buy, what you want to buy, etc. So a lot of brands today, they're really mixing branding objective, but also obviously traffic, but now even more like performance objective. And I can share with you this example of
so just you kind of just hit on it. One thing that we're noticing is definitely this convergence of brand advertising or brand marketing with performance marketing. And I was would love to hear from you. How is that convergence happening on LinkedIn?
I mean, it's really about like the audience framework that you're going to work on. It's really about like the targeting and how you're going to work. So we haven't really spoken about that, so maybe I can touch base on that. But on LinkedIn, you will be able to use our first party data. So it's basically all the demographic data. It's what you and we've put in our profile. So you can say, I want to target people that are directors and CEOs in, I don't know, the finance industry. Or you can say, I want to target people that are just entering, like the professional world. So they're like much younger and they work in creative industries. So retail, design, fashion, luxury, etc. But you can also, of course, use your own data and do lookalikes, etc. We also have custom segments of people that have been engaging with luxury. So we know they're interested in fashion or luxury, or they're like business. I mean, there's like a million combination. But once you've worked on these like different audience that you want to target, you're going to be able to like have an orchestration of formats to make sure you work on the awareness and then you work on the performance. In this case, it's an example of what we call the conversation ad. Mm-hmm. It's a format that was launched about a year ago now. And it's super interesting, and especially at this time where I think everybody needs to like proximity with one another in this kind of virtual world. And Piaget has been using it in a very smart way. So I don't know if you can see if it's big enough, but it's basically it's a message that you will receive in your LinkedIn inbox, and you can propose different ways of like interacting. So you can share like the project they have about women, or you can like give them ideas about gifting, or you can direct to the e-commerce platform. And then of course you can track conversion to see what's the actual impact of LinkedIn on this kind of format. And it's a format that's been used quite often by luxury brands because it creates that really proximity and engagement. Just because I'm sure there would be a question about that, or maybe the question would not be asked, but people think about it. There is a strong capping, like anything we do on LinkedIn, it's very members first. So the idea is not that you receive Piaget and then the next day another brand and then another brand. So you can't receive more than one message every 30 days to keep the really experience on LinkedIn very qualitative, and make sure that we don't, overexpose our members to advertising.
Interesting. Fantastic. And there was also kind of this, I know that drive to store has become also very popular over the past year. And you shared with us this ad. So kind of maybe talk a little bit about awareness and kind of drive to store opportunity.
I think it's an amazing campaign that Chaumet just ran with us, and more than drive to store, it's actually more like drive to events. Chaumet, they have this fantastic exhibition that's still live, Place Vendôme. So for those of you who are in France or in Paris, you should go. It's an exhibition about Joséphine, who used to be the wife of Napoleon, and it's really one of the inspirations of this maison, Chaumet. And so what's interesting here, I mean, it's a pretty classic orchestration of a campaign, but basically starting with brand awareness, with video ads. They could have had like stories, for example, if they wanted as well, and then they're driving website visits to show the collection with like carousel, etc. We work with them on different audience. I'm not going to share everything in the results because it's still like their strategy and something we worked on, but you get the idea. And then the last part was really like using email. So it's a message that you receive in your LinkedIn inbox about being invited to like basically register and get a ticket to go see that exhibition. We've seen really, really good results, and they were happy. We tracked conversions on that, and we also used insights to make sure we target the right person. So as you said, I mean, today there's a strong need also to reach out to the local audience. I mean, we know that there's obviously a lot less people traveling, and actually nobody's traveling. So for example, in France, the luxury market was very much driven by Chinese tourists or American tourists, and these people are not coming anymore. So how do you target like the domestic audience that maybe, I mean, some brands we're always in touch with, but others, they kind of left them apart. So LinkedIn, what we can bring, it's not only insights to understand who is the domestic audience, like who are they, what do they interact with, what do they like, and then target them with different orchestration of formats.
Very interesting. All right, so we're kind of coming up here on time. I did want to kind of put myself in the audience shoes, and if there's perhaps an up and coming luxury brand, or for that sake, even an existing luxury brand that is not currently on LinkedIn and wants to get started, maybe you can share with us a couple tips. How can I get started tomorrow morning on LinkedIn and start driving awareness and engagement and eventually performance for my brand?
Yeah, well, if you're not on LinkedIn, definitely you should be. But hopefully there's no brand that's not yet on LinkedIn. And what's interesting is that, because when we say, I mean, there's obviously like most big luxury brands are active on LinkedIn, but there's also like fashion brands, like high-end fashion brands, like the brands like Ami, for example, that are now active, that have live shows also. So it shows that we're not only able to reach out to the super high net worth individuals, but also to like just generation of people that want to dress well, etc. Now, to answer your question, if you're like just starting on LinkedIn, I think there's one thing that you should keep in mind is really like be members first. So think about the audience, think about the people that you're going to talk to and adapt your message. Think about this like kind of a one-third content. You're going to reach out to the potential customer, your potential employee, and your potential investor. So you should have like corporate content, product content, behind the scenes, share like the heritage. People on LinkedIn, they're curious. They have time. When we look at the average visit session, I can't share the number, but it is interesting compared to like other media in general. Make sure you engage your employees, the employees of your brand, because they will be your best champions and influencers on LinkedIn. If I share something about LinkedIn, it will have power because I work for LinkedIn. So if I share it, it means that I actually believe in it. And also make sure that you use the data to understand who engages with your page. So look at your followers. Look at, which industry do they work in? What seniority do they have? If you only have followers that are directors, but you actually want to reach out to younger generation that maybe work on the message, really use the power of data and insights that we have on LinkedIn. And then once you have done that, you need to, it's a recommendation, but you could follow these principles that we have 6 principles for like a successful creative strategy on LinkedIn. So have a diversified content mix that we've touched on that. Obviously use a lot of visuals. Don't hesitate to have like deep storytelling videos. We don't necessarily recommend to have 3-second or 6-second video. I'm not saying you should have 2-minute video, but it's okay to have videos from like 15-20 seconds up to like 30-40 seconds if you have a story to tell, if it's like a behind the scene like a series, for example. Make sure you design for mobile experience, and I guess that's pretty logical. And then like any social network, like you need to have like a compelling story. You need to share. Like often I'm being asked like, can we have the same content on Instagram and LinkedIn? And my answer is like, yes, potentially you could have the same creative, the same video, but maybe in the copy, remember that the mindset's different and that people are willing to learn something. So when you post a video, I don't know, about a new collection or a show, don't hesitate to say, where it's been shot, what are the links between, I don't know, Capri and the brand and stuff like that. Hashtags, yes, they work on LinkedIn, so use them. And the principle 7, it's pretty much what I've just said, but cater to curious minds and tell stories on different levels. And don't forget also the importance of like employer branding and sharing the vision of your CEO, what it is to work at this or that company, etc.
Fantastic! Wow, so much information, Tatiana. This was great. So we're kind of running short here on time a little, but definitely want to open up for Q&A. Again, we'll be offering a gift card to a lucky winner. And let me just kind of take a quick look. We have a bunch of questions. Definitely reach out if we don't get a chance to answer your question. But there's a question here around on the live streams. Is it possible to advertise on those live streams?
Great question. Not yet. For now, live streams are organic. So what you can do is do campaigns like around it, like promote a preview, or like usually it's a static post because there's not necessarily like a video, and promote like highlights after. There should be a possibility to sponsor at some point the live, but I don't have any visibility on when that would happen.
Okay, great. And then let's see what else. Do you recommend to add text elements on the assets promoted on LinkedIn?
Sorry, say that again. Oh, you mean to have like subtitles?
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I have the number in our luxury playbook, but I think it's 69% of the videos are watched without sound. So definitely having subtitles makes sense.
Okay, interesting. So we have someone here. So I think we'll take 1 or 2 more questions, and then definitely please reach out to us. We'd be happy to answer any questions post-event. Kind of similar maybe to my last question, at least. We have someone here from Italy who's asking that they're looking to launch a big fashion luxury brand. How could they launch it on LinkedIn? So how could they actually launch the brand on LinkedIn? Any tips, any suggestions on using that as a network?
If the idea is to have like a massive launch and to have rich, obviously they should use like sponsored content, and they should work on basically defining who they want to reach out to, and then have a plan like in the long run. We always recommend on LinkedIn to have like an always on presence to make sure you have like frequency and reach. It would be also interesting to consider having a strong organic strategy to make sure that you're like top of mind. There is still a pretty good like organic reach on LinkedIn. So it's worth having an organic strategy as well. But when you establish or when you think about a strategy on LinkedIn, the first thing you need to think about is, who do I want to talk to? And then we can look together at, insights for, I don't know, if you want to target like the younger generation in that specific country, what are they interested in? How does it work, etc. So make sure it's a social network, and we call the people that are using it members. So members are part of a community. So create a community and share like your sense of purpose. Share like if you're, I don't know if it's a new brand or if it's a heritage brand, but who you are, what do you stand for? Besides the product, like where have they been produced? Why is the name of that bag such a name? What's their relationship with the brand, etc. Be open, but be very authentic as well.
Great. I think that's a fantastic place to end our conversation. This has been just so much fun, and I appreciate you coming into our office, and of course the opportunity for us to chat. And I mean, I've learned so much about kind of what's happening on LinkedIn through luxury. We of course are a new partner with LinkedIn, and again, I welcome the audience to reach out to us. We're happy to tell you more about Paragone. We're happy to connect you with LinkedIn. And before we kind of drop off, Tatiana, any final thoughts, any parting thoughts?
Yeah, well, thank you very much, Sharon, for having me, and thanks to everybody who attended. There's as you said, a lot of information. I think to wrap up, it's think about LinkedIn as a place where people are looking to learn, and they're being influenced by the mindset they're in how they want to buy. So it's important to work that whole like content strategy and to like share what you stand for, and don't hesitate to reach out to us or like to Paragone so we can help you like have a smart strategy on LinkedIn.
Fantastic. All right, everyone, to our audience, thanks for joining us, and please keep following up. We have expert series a couple times a month, and we'd love to have you join our next one. Tatiana, again, thank you so much. This has been fantastic, and I look forward to staying in touch.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thanks, everybody.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.